moving to Canada, you had 20 years of solid legal experience. Without entering into the perhaps personal reasons that made you move to Canada, why did you decide to qualify as a lawyer here? With your significant experience, I'm guessing you could have had other work opportunities, so what made you start over fresh?
So I thought when I came here, I thought I would have stopped practicing law too. I thought there would have been other opportunities, and eventually there have been. But I think at the end of the day, most of the drive has come from what I've done before coming here. If you are, if you have been practicing for several years and your clients are happy with what you've been doing and you love your job, it's difficult then to be nothing. I mean, there's nothing wrong in being that, but it's difficult to be a paralegal, to be a legal assistant, to be a legal consultant. You want to have the liability to sign off on your files. That's what we cope with since we start practicing. I mean, this is what maybe we don't want to have, which is the liability and the responsibility. But when you live with it, you know that you also have satisfaction out of it. You have troubles, you have anxiety, you don't sleep overnight. I was missing all of that. And I thought, why should I give up? So at the end of the day, that's been the motivation.
That sounds right to me. It was the same for me. I was like, I want to be able to be a full lawyer here and have the full scale of the opportunities and do whatever I want to be doing. I don't want to have limitations. So that makes lots of sense to me. So Yulia, prior to going to law school, you trained and worked here as a legal assistant before. When you moved to Australia to do law school, did you have a strategy about what you were going to do to come back, complete the licensing process, and find an articling position?
So before I went to the specific law school in Australia, I've met and worked with a lawyer at one of the firms I worked at as a legal assistant. And she actually has been through the journey, went to that law school, and she had to do the 10 NCA exams or something. Ridiculous. And she told me about the school, she told me about her experience, she told me it will be difficult, but she told me that if you really want to get this done, and if you're really not feeling 100% satisfied as an assistant, go for it. And going to law school was always the goal. Even when I went to school as a legal assistant, it was more for the economy reasons at the time. There weren't a lot of positions out there, and law schools were getting way too many applications at the time. And when I went to the specific law school, I knew that the students and the program that was offered to the Canadian and international JD students was geared for people coming back to Canada. We had a Canadian Law Students Association who answered everybody's questions. They made sure everyone knew when they could start applying for NCAs, documents we should get arranged and organized, so that when we do move back to Canada, we hit the ground running. We have everything set to go. All we were waiting for our final grades, I think, of the last exams. So I always knew that when I come back, NCAs are going to be, well, piece of cake, not necessarily, but I only had to do one exam, which was global. And it was always the plan that I will come back to Canada and practice in Canada, not in Australia.
So if I understand correctly from your story, would you agree that you need to have a go-get sort of mentality where you're like, I need to do this, I will find a way, one step at a time, and then that's the way of achieving it?
Definitely take it one step at a time, and you definitely just set the goal for yourself and don't take no for an answer. If you know you want to do it, you'll find a way to do it, and if they say jump, you say how high. You just have to do it.
Very true. So Anna, you come from a civil law jurisdiction, correct? So how did you find the NCA process, and was it challenging for you?
Well, so we have civil law in the Philippines, but we also have jurisprudence, which is the common law here. So I was exposed to both. So, but I had difficulty, and I had to keep reminding myself of like go to the case law like off the bat, and like don't expect to find everything legislated. So I had to keep reminding myself of that even in practice. And so I think that's the big difference that I had to adjust to.
Okay, so would you say that you had sort of like pointers that you would tell yourself I need to do this
Yes.
if I want to transition properly
Yes.
into a new
Yeah.
jurisdiction.
Yes, because you have to understand like how that new jurisdiction works before kind of like molding what you already know and trying to like fit it on the new jurisdiction that you're trying to go to.
And did you come up with those pointers as you went, or
Yes.
you thought about it? Right, it's
Oh,
usually
yes.
trial and error, right?
Yes.
That's usually the way it goes. Elias, what legal experience did you have here in Canada before you opened your own practice? Did you always want to like work independently, or did it happen with time?
So, law is my third or fourth career, I think, depending on what we count as a career. I came to Canada as a student, as a mature student, so to speak. I already was married with 2 children, and so I came as a student at Ambrose University, where I did my Master of Divinity. And so after completing the Master of Divinity, I was looking for a career in ministry, which I'm still in ministry at the moment, Christian ministry. However, I enrolled in a law program without the intention of actually practicing as a lawyer. However, after I completed that program in 2012, I realized I could actually send my transcript to the NCA for evaluation. So I did. And the NCA wrote back and they told me I needed 1 year at a Canadian law school, and I also needed to do 10 more exams. So in 2014, we finally came to a compromise, and I went to do an LLM in the US, which they graciously accepted to satisfy their requirements. I did the NCA exams that they wanted me to do, and I got my certificate of qualification in 2014. In 2015, I started my articles. Now, my articles were composite articles. So
Can you
I did a
explain
month.
what that is?
So composite articles is an effort that the Law Society of Alberta is trying to do to have as many students as possible to be able to have articles. So you split it into several pieces, and a principal is free to take you on for maybe a month or even a week, depending on whether the Law Society agrees. So in my case, my first articling position was for about 2 months, and then the next one was 1 month. And then in June 2015, I was fortunate enough to find someone who gave me for the rest of the time to satisfy the 1 year requirement. So those are the composite articles I did. So the first articles was at Cubits and Company, which is a civil litigation personal injury firm. And then the next 1 month I spent it at a sole practitioner's practice in somewhere in the Northwest. And then West End Legal Center, Jenny McMurdy and Claire McMurdy gave me the rest of the articles from about June 2015 to when I completed. And so after completing my articles, I then worked with West End Legal Center for a few years. And so in 2018, it felt like it was time to branch on my own and start our firm, Moonsha Law, which we started in 2018.
That's a great journey. And if I may bring a bit more information about composite articles, which is something I was considering myself when I started looking for an articling position. So the way it works is you approach different people and you tell them you're interested in splitting up your articling process. So you say, would you be willing to hire me for perhaps 2-3 months? And the opportunity that gives you is you get a foot in the door in many law firms at the same time. So the chances of you getting hired somewhere, getting hired back once you're done articling are much higher. And also it's attractive for law firms because they don't have to pay your whole we have something that's like a bit like bar school here in Alberta, where you have to take courses on top of articling, and that has a cost that's quite high. So composite articles allow firms to pay just for a fraction of that, so it's more attractive for them to hire you. So what you do is you manage to round up all of the 1 year within as many law firms, and then you apply all together to the law society, and you submit separate applications as you move from one composite to the next. Okay, so for our second round of questions, we're gonna discuss a topic that's usually at the top of our minds as ITLs, internationally trained lawyers, which is the difficulties and the challenges we face in this process. So Sharon, you had a pretty heavy workload given the number of exams that you decided to take at once. How did you manage to study for all of the exams at the same time and manage your other commitments? Were you working at the time?
When I made a decision to start the application and I got assessed and knew I was going to write exams, I wasn't working. But very quickly after that, I started to work full time. But I think that so of course it was challenging. I had to work, I had 2 toddler boys, I have 2 toddler boys, and I had a husband who was in and out, and other commitments. So of course it was challenging, and it had been about 10 years the last time I had to write serious exams like this. But I think that the first thing that comes to mind thinking about it now is the fact that I'd gotten to a point mentally, I'd made the decision I was going to go through it, and I was going to write all my exams at once. And there was just no going back on that. The fact that I had conversations with my husband and close friends and said, I'd rather write my exams at once and fail some than stagger them. That was where I was in my mind. I just needed to do that. So that really helped me. There was a bit about time management was huge for me because, there was really, honestly, almost no time to manage. But I had to make a decision that there were days I went almost a week without opening my books. But I had to tell myself that even if all I could master was 30 minutes or 1 hour, I had to be able to tell myself what exactly, in terms of quality I had achieved. Then I must also say that I had very splendid support. I was very blessed to have very splendid support. I had the support of family, even though my husband wasn't here often, but he was. With women, there's something that having emotional support does for you that cuts through almost every other area of your life. And then I had study buddies. I never used to study with people. I used to study on my own. But this time, I realized that I could be an auditory learner. So I had study buddies even when I wasn't actively reading. I had study buddies who I heard, I could trust, and listening to them, hearing them, helped me internalize, because I figure that with MC exams, it's not just reading, it's not just understanding, you also have to internalize, the information you're processing. So yes, I think that decision making, that you're going to do this, that go-getter spirit we're talking about, that determination and doggedness, is almost half of it, and then having good support and being targeted and purposeful with your reading. I think those were what helped me.
It's a very brave approach of saying, you know what, I'm just gonna do the best that I can, but I'm gonna do as much as I can at once. Mm-hmm. That's very brave. If I may add something myself, students who don't have perhaps, who are honest with themselves and say, I have a very challenging situation in life right now, or I'm very busy at work, you have to be strategic about how you take the exams, because, and you can correct me if this has changed recently, but when I took the exams, if you fail one exam, you can't sit it again in the next period. So there are certain, for civil law lawyers, there are certain exams which you can only sit once or twice a year. So if you're not sure you're gonna pass that exam, my advice to you is don't take it, because then you have to skip a period, which can push you back. Ariana, do you face any challenges finding an articling position, and what challenges are you finding now as an articling student?
So I couldn't agree more with Shane. The biggest part is deciding to do it and the determination to do it. Once you have it in your mind, then somehow you do it. Going down to articling, I remember I took one course with NCA tutor, I believe, with Liran, and while I was doing the NCA exams, and he was writing one thing. If you study for your exam, you're gonna pass them. I mean, it's, I'd say not merit-based, but preparation-based. They're doable, you'll do it. Articling is a different story. Articling is, I think articling and then in Alberta CPLE is the real challenge in the sense that it is mostly knowledge-based in the sense it's marketing-based. Law schools in Canada are really good. I have met several articling students, and I could say they're all very well prepared and educated. I was frankly impressed. So the competition is high, especially in Alberta now. I mean, the economy is what it is. The real opportunity comes out of knowing or marketing and be out networking. So network is the most important. One thing. Second thing is you need to know how worth you are. Like there is a trend when you come here in, I'm not saying not acknowledging, but you don't have anything for free. So you need to remember yourself how worth you are and how strong. I'm not talking about superiority or stuff like that, but you need to know how worth you are. So when I applied, when I registered myself for the CPLE, that is the course to be taken instead of the bar examinations, I didn't have an articling position. It was me. I knew I would have had it. It's just repeat it to yourself, and I hammered until I got it. So it's not simple, but if you're determined again, you'll have it. Challenges, I mean, I'm senior out of Canada. I'm junior in Canada. This is my particular position. It will take maybe less time to climb the ladder. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't talk about challenges while articling. I mean, the challenge is the CPLE. You need to article and you need to do another 10 exams. And you had already the NCA exams, and you had your exams when you had your law degree. It's like if you stop and think about it, it is insane. So don't stop and don't think about it and do it. So I'm blessed. I'm articling for Good Fellowship Law. It's a very good firm. My principal is fantastic, and I think I'm blessed. I mean, the challenge is the process itself. But at the end of the day, if you're determined, you'll go through each and every phase of it. But don't allow anybody to not acknowledge the fact that we are worth a lot.
That's very true. And as way of background for our friends who may not know this, in Alberta, we don't sit a bar exam. There's no bar exam, like there is perhaps in Ontario or in BC. But we do have something that's called CPLE, which is like bar school. You go to classes, you have some in-person ones, and then you sit some that you take by an online course or something like that, and you sit exams, which are, as Ariana said, 10 of them. It's very challenging when you're working full-time at the same time. And by the way, if you have trouble hearing us, please let us know and we'll try to fix it. Julia, have you faced any challenges that you think are a result of your unique background and your experience as an NCA student?
I would say that I was blessed because the principal who became my principal, he was a lawyer I worked for prior to applying for articles officially in the firm. And he had, the firm in general, had experience with legal assistants who became articling students in the firm, Anna being one of them. And his own sister went to the same law school I went to, so he knew the value of the education that I received. He knew that there's absolutely nothing wrong with the NCA process. I know there's a lot of firms who are just not familiar. So a lot of firms maybe hesitant to take on a student when they don't know exactly what you went through. They don't know that you went through the NCA process, that Canadian Association looked at your credentials, that you've passed all the exams, that you've passed the Canadian exams that everyone in Canadian law school takes. So it's a bit of a challenge having to explain that. And the first firm that I started working at after I came back from Australia, I knew articling was on the table, but I knew that they weren't familiar with the NCA process and that it would take me a really long time to show myself, prove myself, to ask for those opportunities so I could do that. And I knew that I would probably be stuck as an assistant there for way longer than I would want to be. And so I made the decision, went to another firm. I worked with a lawyer for 6 months, and during those 6 months, he, after a few months, noticed that he could give me more work. He noticed that I'm capable and able, I don't need to have a lot of things explained, also probably because of the legal assistant experience that I had. And there was never a question, nobody ever doubted that, hey, we have already had students who summered here and you didn't, but you're now working and you're now going to be articling at the same time as them. It was just accepted, and everyone kind of took me on, and the 2 other students who articled at the same time as me, they were a great asset, and we kind of helped each other out through the whole articling CPLIT fun experience that it is. And there was never a question that I didn't learn something or something was missing in my education that everyone had to explain to me or hold my hand or something. Never.
That's great. So you wouldn't say that there were any challenges when you started working as an associate that you felt, oh, I am not as prepared as everyone else?
No, I think the preparation comes during articling. It's that time, maybe the last couple of months, when you start thinking of, oh no, I don't just have to think about passing CPLIT every couple of months in every assignment. You have to focus on, oh my God, I have to get a job, and think of what that might be in the practice you want to do. And then during that time, you mentally prepare yourself that no matter what it takes, I'll be working. And I knew that the firm had the need and that I was working in the areas that the firm needed an associate to work in. But I was full well prepared that if for some reason I wasn't offered the position, I would go and look for one. And it could be in Calgary, and it could be in anywhere in Alberta, really. I would have done it, and I would have not felt like I would have to explain, hey.
Went to CPLIT together, we did the same articling process. So I think once you get past that point, you get on the bar, you're like at that level already.
It's true that the articling position is the gatekeeper.
Yes.
If you can pass that, you're in, you're
in,
one of us.
yes.
It's
And
great.
so I think the challenge now is not because I'm internationally trained. It's more of because I didn't grow up here. So it's more of a social thing. So you go to client events, you're different. And so you don't get the same childhood show context or whatever. You don't get the same jokes. You don't get the same culture. That's fine, because you can go past that. But yeah, so I think once you're past articles,
You're in.
you're good to go.
I would agree with that. I would say that the edge that new Canadian associates have over ITLs is that they're in the networking game way more than us, because they know everyone else. So you have things in common, you talk about people everyone knows, and you don't have that benefit. So knowing that, what you need to do is you need to get yourself out there. Get the networking opportunities like what GLC tries to enable, and just get out there and do it. So Elias, what challenges did you face setting up your own practice in Canada? And do you think any of those challenges were a result of your background as a former NCA student?
So I think everyone who has started their own firm has different experiences as to why they are going to start their own firm. I worked with very good people. Western Legal Center was an excellent law firm. Senior lawyers there were very passionate about bringing me in as an international lawyer and as an international student, and working with them. After my call to the bar, they then gave me a position as an associate. And I think I learned quite a lot in terms of litigation and a little bit of cultural issues here and there. But I think I just felt like it was time to branch out on my own and start my own firm. It wasn't strange, it wasn't very difficult. By the time that I put in my notice of resignation, I had already been seriously considering starting my own firm. However, I think we need to perhaps move from, some people are starting law firms, like internationally trained lawyers are starting law firms because they feel like they can't fit into the culture and the structures of existing law firms that are run by Canadians, by indigenous Canadians, by old stock Canadian, using Stephen Harper's language. I don't know what other term I could use for that. But so because you feel like you cannot be hired back, you're not being hired back, and you feel like I'm going to step aside and start my own firm. But perhaps what we need is a conversation, and I think the Global Lawyers Association here provides that opportunity for international lawyers to have a conversation. Is there any way we can be sharing ideas and resources and offices and expertise and research and questions? That perhaps could help, because not everyone needs to go and start their own firm. And I think it will be very concerning if internationally trained lawyers are all just after a day after they are called to the bar, they are all just setting up shop on their own. I think what we need is to see how best can we encourage more collaboration, among internationally trained lawyers in practice as well as before they set out. So for me, I think if some of the questions were still the same, I would still be with Western Legal Center, because I think it was a brilliant law firm. It was just one or two things that made me think I could be on my own.
Elias, I think you've made an excellent point about the synergies that we ITLs need to find amongst ourselves. And I think it's very interesting what you're saying is you don't feel like you can fit in to perhaps the firm where you started. We should all like group together and see where we can collaborate too. So have you taken on personally at your law firm any artisan students? And if you were to take them on, would you take ITLs?
So when we started my law firm, I had a few months into practice, I had an internationally trained lawyer who became my assistant. She's doing brilliantly, and Monday she's writing an exam in professional responsibility. I hope that a few months that she has spent with me are going to be very helpful for her to pass that exam. But I also worked with another internationally trained lawyer, and she did an LLM at the University of Calgary, and so we worked together for a few months. So definitely, my law firm is very open to encouraging internationally trained lawyers. And in fact, I am going to be eligible to take on an articling student in May. So first of all, the first offer has gone to my assistants, right? That's the first offer. We are only going to consider other applications after we ensure that the two individuals, wonderful individuals, get their foot in the door, and I'm willing to be able to facilitate that. After that, I think we are going to have another opportunity open up and have as many articling students as possible. I think that's the only way.
That's
and
wonderful.
Now that the Law Society is in fact making it easier by the composite articles, they're much more open to various ways of encouraging law students to come on as articling students. I think we all of us here as internationally trained lawyers that are in practice with 4 years in practice, I think let us be out there and encourage that we open up to students. The issue, however, is there is this idea among NCA students that they need to be paid so much money to become an articling student. And sometimes that can be a real issue as far as small solo practitioners are concerned. So it's a very delicate balance between you looking at your bottom line as a solo practitioner and the need to bring in this articling student who apparently is expecting so much money to work. And so there is need to, first of all, temper your own expectations as an NCA student, because there are so many solo practitioners that might be willing to take you on. You shouldn't be working for free, but neither should you be demanding that you be paid a lot of money. So, but a compromise should be reached in between. The other thing is, articling students have got to understand that when they are articling at a firm, you are not really making a lot of money for the firm. Having gone on to practice on my own, you see, having an articling student, first of all, you have to provide a desk, a computer, if possible, and a little bit of expense. Okay, assuming that you've provided everything, it is also costing you time. Because no matter how much experience you have from your own jurisdiction, I did not come to Canada with legal experience because I wasn't a lawyer in Zambia. No matter how much experience you have outside the Canadian jurisdiction, when you come here, you are a student, and so you are costing time on the principal as well. So a little bit of humility to understand that when you are talking to a prospective principal, that you understand and you sympathize with their situation might open doors far much better for you than you would ever imagine. But if you are talking to a principal and you are coming from the perspective of, I know this stuff, I've been a lawyer for 20 or 30 years from my home country, and there is nothing you can tell me, and I deserve the highest pay that you can ever do, that becomes a little different.
I think Elias is right. I think ITLs, we need to help each other, and once we make it to the other side, we need to help each other as much as we can, and this is what we're trying to do today. But also I think that when you're an NCA student, sometimes you need to temper your expectations a bit, and I think composite articles is a way that you could factor that in. Is perhaps someone really wants to help you out, but they can't pay for the overhead that is to have you as an articling student. So perhaps you could do just a few months with them and take it from there. But you guys know now that you can send your applications to Elias. And if I may ask our audience to send your questions to Instagram only, so that we can answer the questions. And Facebook as well, sorry. Okay, now we're gonna move to our third round of questions. And I think that this is one of the most important things. And I think Ariana hit the nail on the head on this one, and it's marketing. One of the most important things you need to learn as an ITL is how you're gonna brand yourself, how are you gonna tell your story so in a way that is compelling to sell it. It's easy for us to focus on the challenges we have, and we forget that our unique backgrounds and our prior experience is something we're bringing on the table, and it's something that has value. To find an articling position, to stay employed within the profession, we all need to learn how to tell our stories. So our third round of questions will look at the advantages that the speakers have as a result of being ITLs. So Shim, what advantages did your prior experience give you when preparing for the NCA exams? Being in terms of practice management, time management, knowledge, willpower, which we know you have lots of.
So I'd start from the willpower side of things. I'd say that being an internationally trained lawyer who has a reasonable number of years of experience, you'd realize that your mental strength and your mental development, separate from academics and all of that, just your mental acknowledgement and your ability to galvanize yourself, you know, as a force, as a person, is been strongly developed, especially during your years of practice, because, you know, like you said, after you practice for a while, you just can't settle for certain things. That sense of liability, responsibility, wanting to do more, especially as lawyers, you know, it just goes, and especially as lawyers coming from a lot of, I feel like a lot of internationally trained lawyers, our countries have, well, maybe it's just human, we just have certain similarities. You just have some prestige and dignity that comes with the profession, and that you've partaken of, you've experienced firsthand as an individual. And so that cuts out a lot of banter and conversation from the start. Once you make the decision, you just know that if this is what I have to do, I just have to do it. I'm just going to do it. I will just get it done. So yes, you're able to, your willpower is top notch when you finally make that decision. And then, I mean, we, as internationally trained lawyers, you've written exams. Exams are not, I'm sorry, but really, that's just what I think. You know, as lawyers, reading and writing exams and studying and getting into the examiner's mind might be scary initially, but if you really do settle down and give yourself some time to process it, it really, I found, you know, shouldn't be what should hold you back. You know, so I feel like, and I practice as a litigator. I've defended matters before judges, spoken with clients, you know, all walks of life. I mean, you know, you're bringing a lot to the table, like you said, and we're not yet even talking at the NCA exam stage. We're not yet talking about what you're bringing to the table. We're talking about what you can do for yourself. That should be the least of pretty much.
So willpower, yeah, that's very true. Ariana, you were able to find fulfilling work opportunities while completing the licensing program, despite not having prior experience here in Canada. So how did you profile yourself to find these opportunities, and what advantages did your past experience give you?
This is something I still ask myself. So just to give you an idea, when I moved to Canada, I had already had an experience in India. I was around the Middle East, and I thought, I'm not saying I would have had doors open, especially if you work on a business law environment, but I would have had interest on legal environment. It was not like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been my main disappointment, but not because it was not an open market for me, but because I had deluded myself. So you always have to have feet on the ground and know that you're starting from the beginning again. So I would apply for lots and lots of legal assistant position, and the reply was always the same one: you're overqualified.
Right.
Whether it's a gentle reply, whether it's true, I don't know. But that was I got so many of them. And then I realized that, on advice also, my husband has been always very supportive. Like, if you have family, it's a journey for the family too. And you would say you've always been doing business law, you've always been hand-holding your clients, so you're used to see it close to entrepreneurs, to CEOs and stuff like that. Try to use that. And so I started applying for positions like contract manager and positions that were close to a legal environment, but not so close anymore. And my previous boss, let's say, she's a woman. She was one of the two shareholders of this company. I loved working for her, and when she interviewed me, she looked at me and she said, I would be crazy if I didn't hire you right away if you want to be a contract manager. I didn't know what being a contract manager was. I had no idea. And
So you stumbled upon
yes,
the job.
And they realized that I liked it a lot. So, and then they knew I was a lawyer, so at the end of the day, I had a lot of work to do. Never related to legal advice because it's something we can't do. But at the end of the day, helping out and writing policies, procedures, interfacing with external counsels. So at the end of the day, it was a brilliant opportunity, and that helped me a lot in what I'm doing now, for sure.
That's great, and I think that's a lesson for everyone out there, is think about your soft skills, and while you're trying to find your articling position, be open to other opportunities that could bring you into that position, because these skills, especially if you acquire them in Canada, are going to be easily translatable to your articling position. And you will meet so many people while working that your chances of finding that position are incrementally higher. So Yulia, you were able to secure an articling position with the law firm that you were working with as a legal assistant. How did you achieve this?
When I started at the firm, I'm pretty sure the two lawyers I worked for, seeing my resume, knew that one day I will probably ask for articling. But all three of us, we just kind of didn't approach the subject necessarily. I did share my previous experience with them, that I worked at the firm and the article was on the table, but I wasn't necessarily happy with what I was observing in terms of client management and practice management. And I knew that probably, even if I was eventually offered articling there, it probably wouldn't be the place where I want to learn how to be a lawyer in Canada and how to manage my practice. And after 6 months of working for my lawyer, I just came to him one day and said, hey, you know this was coming, and I'm really sorry, you're gonna have to look for another assistant, but I'm going to pursue articling. I was first disheartened with my past experience with the practice management that I've seen and the situation in Calgary being what it is in terms of the economy. But I said, I'm gonna look for articling, and I know you guys could use another student, and if it's not here, I'm gonna go somewhere else. And he was really surprisingly open to this conversation, and he knew it was coming. And I think at the end of the day, in my firm, everyone who was asking for another position or articling or people moving from one department to another was looked at as a whole package of what are your soft skills, what did you do? Nobody necessarily said, hey, what's on your resume and are you qualified? That came later. There was still the proper application process, but it was a conversation of, I worked here for 6 months, longer than any summer student works during the long summer. You've seen that I fit the firm culture. You know what my skills are, specifically the guy who became my principal.
They're making a ton of money. They're not. And so what you need to do is to come up with a creative way. Make suggestions like, look, if I came to work for you, can you give me a base payment of like $5 an hour? $5 is an exaggeration. Like $10 an hour for the time I'm at your firm, and then give me a percentage of whatever file I work on. You know, something like that. Come up with a very creative way. Now, big law firms, they need to pay their law students far much more. The amount of money that these big law firms are paying to law students is pretty low. So I'm encouraging big law to make it more competitive and pay students far much more. And to also look outside the regular articling process and bring in internationally trained lawyers and hire them in your law firms. As for the medium boutique law firms, open up, try to bring in law students as legal assistants, because there are several of us here that are saying that they started off as legal assistants. Bring them on as legal assistants, pay them as legal assistants, and when the opportunity comes, give them an articling position. But yes, I think articling students should be paid. The question is, articling students need to be sensitive to the money issue, and try to negotiate from a perspective of saying, hey, can I meet you halfway? What can we do about this? Can you pay me a small base salary and let me get a percentage of the files that I actually work on, or something like that?
I think that's sound advice. From a regulatory perspective, the Law Society does not require law firms to pay you. I know this is a thing in Ontario where articling positions are scarce and it's hard to find one, so people do it for free, and this is perfectly legal. So you shouldn't expect from a regulatory perspective that you will be paid. But I think as Elias is saying, you should be paid. I think that's reasonable.
Yes,
It's
that's
hard
right.
work. And I think if you're, Elias can correct me here, but I think if you're being paid less than market, usually the expectation is going to be you're not going to be working like the hours that most articling students work, which is like 12 to sky's the limit. So I think it goes both ways.
I think the issue with the time is, you see, the legal market, unfortunately, is not a one size fits all. Because what is happening in big law and smaller boutique law firms is completely different from what is happening in solo practices. And so, because of that, the burden, I think, is on you as a student to know the differences of what the market is saying. Because as a solo practitioner, what is the market that I'm going to pay an articling student? Am I going to use the big law rate, or am I going to use the minimum rate? In my opinion, if you are an articling student and you are receiving, what is the Alberta minimum? $15? And you're receiving $15 an hour, you really have a good deal. You have a good deal. So get it. Some expect you to put in longer hours, but some solo practitioners, they don't even have enough work to keep you for longer hours. So a lot of flexibility. But as a rule, if you are an articling student, do not stay with a principal that is not giving you work. Okay? No matter how much money he's paying you, if he's not giving you work, if you are not working, then there is no value in that articling. And I know there is a lot of these things going on where you are only filling the time. I don't know how ethical or unethical it is, but I'll leave the ethical questions to be answered by those doing the exams on Monday on professional responsibility. But this idea that all you need is a person to sign off on your application, no, you need to be doing something. If they can sign off on your behalf, find somewhere else. Speak to the Law Society. Let them come up with an arrangement where you can actually do some work.
That makes sense.
And diversity of work, you see.
Okay, so for our last question here, we have a question about, did anyone on the panel apply for articles at big law firms, and how was their experience?
I applied, I was rejected.
Actually, I articled with a national firm, Castles, and I'm gonna tell you very briefly about my experience with applying for a national firm. I applied to all national firms in Canada and never received a reply, ever. If you're applying within the process, you are not gonna get a call, which means they start hiring usually second-year summer students, and those summer students become their articling students, and those get hired back and become their new associates. That's how national firms like to hire students. So my advice to you is, if you want to work for a big law firm, do not apply within the process. Just don't. Until the Law Society, any Law Society does anything about this, that's the reality of things. The way of getting a position with a big firm, if that's what you want to do, you try emailing people. And this is where word of mouth helps. You meet people who know people who are working at a certain firm, and you ask them to go for coffee. That's the magical word. You have someone who's gonna introduce you, if you're lucky. If not, you're emailing them on your own, and you are just very respectfully and very tactfully acknowledge that they're very busy people, but that you want to hear more about their experience, and that you would be very grateful if they were to go on a coffee for you and tell you about their work. And that's usually the way it starts. And I was lucky enough that Castles is a national firm that opened up in Calgary in 2016. So we're still a pretty small office. And so they were open. They didn't have a student program back then. And they were like, oh, you sound like you have lots of experience. sounds like a really good fit for us. But the biggest challenge is for lawyers to know that we are out there, that we have valuable experience, and until they relate to you as a person, they see your face, they talk to you, they're not going to understand that. So my advice to you is, if you want to work for a big firm, just don't go the usual way,
Yes.
go around.
Yeah. Yes, and I wanted to add there because and you have to know the reason behind it. Like so like with big law, everyone, like all the students in Canada and Canadian law firms, they submit, like they would get like a ton of applications. If you go through that same process, just imagine it, like they're looking at like thousands of applications from Canadians, like law schools, which they know, and then you come in totally like foreign, they don't know it, like it's not a bad thing, they just don't know. And so if you stack up those applications, like I'm sorry,
they don't
know
understand
you.
them.
They
They
don't
don't get
understand,
it.
and so you're the first to be cut. And so, like, acknowledge that we're special.
Yeah,
Like, we're different. We're special.
I like
And
that.
so,
yeah.
to do that, like, you have to go through a special route
Yes,
because
I agree.
You can't
100%.
compete with that.
I'm gonna break protocol here a bit, and I'm gonna ask our organizers. We have more questions. Do we have time to go through those questions, or should we just wrap up? We have more questions. Should we wrap up? Okay, we'll do just one more question, and this one is: was the language a barrier for any of you? And if so, what did you do to improve your legal English? This is a very good question.
So now Canada is some people are even questioning whether it's a nation. However, it's very important. If you are an NCS student or articling student, do not take it personally if somebody is not happy with your English. Do not take it personally. Please do not take it personally. I think that is my advice I would give. But probably other discussants might have different
I think
experiences.
we're the only ones that are not English.
No, I'm a Spanish
Oh, yes,
speaker
right.
myself.
Yeah, three of us.
I think we all
I mean, you need to know English.
Oh
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think-
practice, repeat,
Yeah.
do
talk
it
to
again.
people. Like again, soft skills. It's like talk to people, like do small talks in coffee shops or like water breaks or like to me, I didn't hurry because like it took me like 7 years to complete the process, but like the soft skills that I got, like make friends with other people, just talk informally, and it's practice. Get on the phone.
I think that's a very good closing message. Practice, repeat.
Yeah.
Again. Never stop. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us on our seminar today. I think we had very interesting discussions. I would like to thank all our panel speakers for your very valuable advice here. And I'm sure I speak for everyone else. If you have more questions, you can address those to us directly. You can email us, and that's good. We're gonna wrap up our seminar now, and after this, you will hear a message from the GLC Calgary board. So thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is your GLC Global Lawyers of Canada Calgary Alberta chapter. I want to say a big thank you to our panelists and to Viviana for moderating this session.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
From what we saw online and all the questions and feedback and all the likes, it was a pretty successful event on Instagram and I believe on Facebook. I want to say a big thank you to Kenny Lyon, who is the media genius. You thought lawyers were not internet geniuses, but he's the genius that set everything up and made sure we got this going. So, just a quick introduction and then a highlight of what the GLC Alberta Calgary board will be doing. Want to introduce yourself?
All right, I'm Dio Gunyami. I'm a director at GLC, Global Players of Canada.
My name is Kane Ilochon.
Kenny Okwala.
Viviana, I became a member last week.
August Director.
So this is your GLC Calgary board. We're still looking for board members, so anyone that is watching that would like to join us, please get in touch with us at info@glcanada.org. Okay, so quickly, what are we doing for the next few
So for the first quarter of 2020, we have a major event coming up. So stay tuned. We'll be sharing more details pretty soon. You can visit our website and also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Just stalk us and you'll get the information for the event pretty soon.
Awesome.
All right, we have the annual general meeting on the 7th of February 2020. If you go to the website, you'll be able to see the address of the place, of the venue of the annual general meeting. So, and I think you need to register as a member to be able to be eligible to attend the meeting.
Yeah, so you can visit glcanada.org/membership/register to become a member of GLC. All registered members are welcome to the annual general meeting. So it's on the 7th of February. And we also encourage our panelists that came today to also register to become members of GLC. This is a community we're trying to build here, and we want to be able to keep track of who our members are. Registration is free for now, so register as soon as possible.
Okay, I don't think there are videos from the other chapter.
We'll be sharing a video from our BC chapter pretty soon, and our Ontario chapter too. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Alright. Hello from beautiful BC.
Hi everyone.
I'm Siobhan. I'm the co-president of GLC and the BC chapter.
My name is Edward and I'm the director of the board of GLC BC as well.
Thank you so much for joining us all tonight. We know you have plenty of questions about the road to being licensed in BC and across Canada in general, and we'd love to answer some of those questions either tonight or on an alternative venue. So a little bit about GLC BC, I guess. So we are a brand new chapter. We officially launch actually this month. So we will be having our official launch event in February. We're going to be doing equivalent of speed mentoring. So we're going to be doing a lot of the same conversations that you guys are listening to tonight, but we're actually going to have various different people coming and being mentors for you. So we hope that you all sign up. You can follow us on our Facebook page, you can follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, I believe, and also you can register on our website, glcanada.org, and we will send you more of the information specifically about our BC events.
Yeah, and just to build off that, I think with the BC chapter here, our aim is just to bridge the gap and foster the connection of internationally trained lawyers, so we can all collaborate and provide mentorship need. And I know personally for myself, when I came here, what was lacking was that just that connection between lawyers practicing here already in Canada and getting accredited here. So with the BC chapter here, we're excited, and we want to continue to build and foster as much assistance and help that we can provide to all of you.
Absolutely, and no matter where you're at in the process, whether you are right now doing your LLB somewhere exciting in the world, or you're right here and you're sitting your NCA exams this month, or you're already called to the bar in BC or another province in Canada, we welcome you into our membership. We can't wait to see you at one of our events, and definitely get in touch with us and share your story, because we all get stronger if we connect and share our stories with each other. So we look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, we just wanted to say hi and to thank Committee and Lawyers of Canada, the Ontario chapter. It's Sam, Rory, and Melanie. I'll pass over to Sam.
Thanks, Mel. So yeah, we're here at our second event, our first event this year, and we have about, you can't see, but inside there's about 67 people that have showed up, and a lot of new faces. And yeah, we're excited about the upcoming events this year that Lauren will tell you about.
Thanks, Sam. So just tonight we launched our small group program, which will bring together 4 to individuals, NCA candidates, licensing candidates, experienced lawyers, for them to share best practices and meet people in the community. You can sign up online by visiting the GLC website. We are also already planning some professional development events for the spring and planning to start to connect with leaders in the community to advocate for the interests of internationally trained lawyers. That is our fundamental mission. So we look forward to working with you. If you would like to become a member, it's very easy. Just visit our site. We hope to see you at our next event soon.
Thank you.